My next guests today are with the Lighthouse for the Blind of Fort Worth. As our population continues to age, more and more families are finding themselves with a loved one with vision problems. And according to a recent survey, more Americans fear vision loss more than they fear getting cancer, heart disease, having a stroke, or HIV and AIDS. Here in our area, the Lighthouse for the Blind in Fort Worth provides services to assist legally and totally blind individuals. Joining me in studio right now are Lisa Fellers, the head of development at Lighthouse for the Blind Fort Worth, also Leslie Ware, the head of client services, and Rebecca Smith, who is in charge of external communications for the agency. Lisa, Rebecca, Leslie, thank you all so much for being on the program today.
Thank you.
Lisa, what do you want people to know about the work that goes on at the Lighthouse for the Blind in Fort Worth?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned in your intro that going blind is one of the worst fears of Americans. I found that to be true as well. I've been with the Lighthouse about 2.5 years, and we've been in existence since 1935, since the Great Depression. And when I came aboard and looked at our donor records, we only had like 824 donors in our donor database completely.
Well, is it because a lot of people think, oh, well, you know, people who are blind are born blind. They don't think of an aging population and family members who may be reaching their 50s, ending up with cataracts and becoming blind.
That's a great comment, because when I first started working at the Lighthouse, I thought blind meant you can't see anything.
Yeah.
And legally blind actually means with corrective glasses, you can only see 20/200 out of one eye. So if you are, when you go get an eye exam, you want to end up having a prescription that's going to give you 20/20, right?
Yeah.
And so if you end up with a prescription that only can give you 20/200 in one eye, that is considered legally blind.
And then you can't drive, you can't
Absolutely
perform
not.
your job in a lot of
Exactly.
cases, and so you have to completely change your life. Leslie, as someone who's head of client services, what other services and the programs that the Lighthouse for the Blind of Fort Worth provides to people here in our area?
So some of the services that we offer include assistive technology training, which is very important. That's training on anything related to the computer and adaptive software that can assist an individual that has no vision in still being independent and reading their mail and, taking care of business and their bank accounts and things of that nature through software that is speech software. There's also enlarged software, various different ones, lots of different companies that make that. So we do training on that. We also provide assistance and training in orientation and mobility, which involves training with the white cane, but also it involves just knowing where you are in space and time, knowing how to get around. We call it your get-around skills. So how do I get from here to Fort Worth, back to my office? If I were blind, how would I do that?
Learning bus schedules,
Trains,
Uber
exactly.
on your phone, that kind of thing. Lisa, you wanted to add something.
I was actually thinking, Leslie, I never knew what those bump dot thingies were on the ground, like when you're crossing the street, before you cross the street.
The truncated bumps.
Truncated bumps. And whenever I'm walking my dog in my neighborhood, I see those. And so I've learned that those are actually there for a purpose. Leslie, what is that purpose?
That is so that someone who's blind and using a cane can actually identify when they're coming to the end of a curb and it's about to be a street, And
I'm glad that you mentioned white cane, because coming up on October 15th, next month, it's White Cane Safety Day, a national observance in the United States set aside to celebrate the achievements of people who are blind or visually impaired. And here in North Texas, what is going to be taking place, Rebecca, since you're in charge of external communications and raising awareness about the work that the Lighthouse for the Blind in Fort Worth does? What's going to be taking place to mark White Cane Safety Day in Fort Worth?
So they are going to be having a North Texas White Cane Safety Day. It's going to be at the Kimball Art Museum on the 15th from 9 a.m. to 1:30. It's called The Art of Navigation.
What all will be taking place for somebody who comes out to the Kimball on that day?
They will be able to come out and tour the Kimball Art Museum, something that most people wouldn't think blind people could appreciate.
And they can find out more about this event on the website, which is lighthousefw.org, lighthousefw.org. What exactly is blind awareness training? Leslie?
So we call blindness awareness training. We kind of shorten it and just call it BAT. but it's when someone who is either losing their vision or a loved one of someone who's losing their vision, or even sometimes companies for development and team development exercises will want to do this just for understanding what it might be like to be blind. For example, if they had an employee that joined their team that was blind. But what we do is we blindfold them, and we teach techniques under blindfold. And when I say techniques, I'm talking about we'll do a little bit of Braille, just basic fundamentals. We're going to do some various different tasks like pouring water. Sometimes we do a peanut butter sandwich. Also, a little bit of O&M, how to get around. We're not going to take you out and put you on I-30 and make you cross the street. But, basic safety, how would one, just the skills of how to use a white cane, because that does take extensive training. So various different things like that. And then we also talk a lot about technology.
And letting people know that just because they receive a diagnosis that they are going legally blind, that it's not the end of the world.
Absolutely. I mean, you said that so perfectly. Thank you. That is exactly right. And that is one of the things that we're able to do, and we're grateful to be able to do this, is help UNT Health Sciences Center, the young doctors who are in medical school there, come over as a rotation and do some blindness awareness training with us. And the biggest thing I share with them, because these are, what I call young people. Mm-hmm. I mean, they look like kids. But I tell them, just because someone receives a diagnosis like that, it is not the end of their life. Life goes on. There's lots of things you can do that you can still live your life. You just do it in a different way.
Yeah, you have to learn a new normal. So when it comes to jobs for the clients, how does Lighthouse for the Blind Fort Worth work, Rebecca?
So we are a very unique nonprofit because we do have a manufacturing side. We have products to sell. We have 100% direct blind labor. So we have people in there who are legally blind up to totally blind, operating table bandsaws. When you get like a refrigerator box and they have the big staples, we have people who are totally blind operating those box staplers. And so we have people that have been there 30 plus years working.
It gives them a sense of purpose when they're able to show up to Lighthouse for the Blind and know that they have a job.
It is. And the dedication from these employees is amazing. We have some people that are waking up at 3, 4 in the morning to catch multiple buses to get there at 7 a.m. Are there every day unless, they have a doctor's appointment that they can't schedule. You walk through, everybody has a positive attitude. They're happy. They're glad to be there. When I talk to some of them, I'll ask, what is the biggest thing about working here? And most of them will tell me, I feel like I'm a valuable member of society again.
Yeah. So when we were established back in 1935, our core mission was actually to hire blind and visually impaired individuals. And since then, we have grown to create a client services program where that's our community outreach arm. Mm-hmm. So basically, we have a manufacturing operation, and we have a community outreach / client services arm. Everything that we provide is free of charge. We don't charge anything. That's why any gifts and any donations are much appreciated, because we just can't do it without the help of the community.
So whether it's the manufacturing arm of the nonprofit or the client services that you're in charge of, Leslie, right. No charge whatsoever to the families.
Absolutely.
No, not at all. And we have a sales team that sells the products that our blind labor force makes.
So that's how you're able to sustain
exactly right.
The nonprofit.
Yes, and to pay them, I think our average hourly wage is almost $15.
Full benefits.
Full benefits, and so it helps not only the individual who is working, it helps their families and keeps them independent, which that is what we try to do. That is our highest goal, is independence.
Leslie, you wanted to add something?
Currently, we don't have any openings. We have a lot of different things that we do. We make boxes. We have contracts with the federal government where we have made in the past energy dissipating pads, which were dropped out of, airplanes and helicopters, and Humvees were there to absorb that impact. And there's some really cool videos about that on YouTube. But also, just so many different things we're looking into. The optical lab is one thing. We're actually making glasses. So that's something cool, and we're real excited about that opportunity and how that's going to grow in the next year.
And if somebody wants information about the client services, the independent living training, assistive technology training, about job opportunities or anything that you've just mentioned, Leslie, they can go to the website lighthousefw.org, lighthousefw.org. The new technology is pretty amazing. I just saw this story about a blind engineer in Turkey who is inventing a smart cane that will use Google Maps to help people blind navigate.
Yeah, we saw that too. I was talking to one of my colleagues about that, and I was like, what do you think about this? And he was like, oh, different people have made things like that before. And he was like, we should get one. And we looked into the price. I think they're a little bit pricey, but I'd like to try one.
Well, the iPhone, when it first came out, was extremely pricey, and so was the computer. So hopefully, eventually, we'll see everyone with a smart cane and a smartphone.
It's amazing, the kind of technology they have. They even have glasses that have a little camera in, and they can actually use the phone, Bluetooth, and call in somebody. And there is a person sitting on the other end with a monitor that can actually see what they're seeing. And that comes in handy at airports. So you can look to the left and the right and the left and the right, and they go, I'm at gate 32, and where do I need to go? And that individual on the other end would say, make a left.
Leslie, how important is it for someone who notices that they're having vision problems or notices that a loved one is having vision problems for them to reach out to the Lighthouse for the Blind in Fort Worth and say, you know what, we're just starting this journey, but we may need help? How important is it for them to reach out to you just as soon as they get a diagnosis?
Oh, it's so important. It's so important. And I'm glad you said as soon as they get a diagnosis, because the first thing I would tell them would be find a really good ophthalmologist and actually get an accurate diagnosis of what's going on with your eyes. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's first. Second, once we know that, we know if it's a progressive condition or is it something that's going to be stable, and then we can begin the training on what their needs are. I will tell you, we have helped numerous people, hundreds of people, and no two exact training programs were exactly alike. Because even though the services are the same, not everybody needs the same thing, so some people are still of working age. I mean, we serve all ages. We serve children, babies, up to elderly. Now, we do work closely with Educational Service Center in our region, in Region 11, and so they have training in the schools. But sometimes you have a student who is homeschooled. Sometimes you have a private school, lots of parochial schools, and they have reached out to us and said, we have a student who's struggling. Can you help? And we're able to do that. So that's the rewarding part, I think, of the work that we all do.
Seeing how you're changing lives and impacting families. My guest once again for this segment of the program, Leslie Ware, Head of Client Services for the Lighthouse for the Blind Fort Worth. Also in studio, Lisa Fellers, the Head of Development, and Rebecca Smith, who is in charge of external communications for the agency. Their mission, to empower individuals who are blind so that they can lead successful and independent lives. As our population ages, more and more people are dealing with vision issues. And coming up on October 15th, it's National White Cane Safety Day to raise awareness. As Head of Development, Lisa, you're in charge of raising funds for the programs at Lighthouse for the Blind in Fort Worth. What is it that you want people to know about the agency and why it's important to invest in the Lighthouse for the Blind Fort Worth?
This has been probably one of the most challenging missions that I've worked for. I've been in nonprofits my whole life, and the only reason being, well, actually two reasons. One that you had mentioned at the beginning, that one of the greatest fears of Americans is going blind. And secondly, most people, including myself, before I started working here at the Lighthouse, don't know anyone who has a visual impairment or who has low vision or can't see a thing. So for those two reasons, if you're afraid of something and you can't identify or you don't have a connection, just makes it really challenging for the Lighthouse to actually raise money.
Besides giving money, Rebecca, there are so many other opportunities for people in our community to help out the Lighthouse for the Blind in Fort Worth. How can the community help?
So last year we started our official volunteer program, and our biggest need are for drivers. Most of our staff on our client services team are blind, and they are working with clients in their home. Mm-hmm. So we have that gap getting from point A to point B. So right now we have 3 extremely dedicated drivers that help our employees get out there to help with the clients. But as we're getting more clients, as you said, the population's aging, we are getting a higher demand for drivers. So if people can go to our website and visit our volunteer page, they can see all the current listings. We need drivers.
Okay. So volunteer opportunities, donation opportunities, go to lighthousefw.org. Leslie, you mentioned it. You have clients who are babies whose families have just found out that they are blind. But then you also have people who are young who have cataracts or astigmatism and have found out that they're legally blind. Mm-hmm. So you have clients from cradle to grave, pretty
Absolutely,
much.
Right. And, that term legally blind, it gets thrown around a lot. Generally, we say significant visual impairments because it is on various different levels.
Yeah, spectrum.
Right, absolutely, depending on what their visual condition is. And there's so very many of them. One thing we do deal with frequently, or we see frequently now, is macular degeneration with our elderly people. So, and they live in areas oftentimes that may be in the rural type areas. So we serve all of Tarrant County, but also the counties to the north, to the west, and also to the south. So you may have someone living out in Weatherford who needs training on, maybe they've always cooked, and now they're like, how am I going to prepare a meal for my family? I had a young mother who called crying and saying she had little kids still in school. And she says, I've just gotten this diagnosis, and it's progressive, and I'm going to lose my vision, and I don't know what to do. So we get calls like that pretty much on a daily basis, and we welcome them because that's why we're here. But we were able to provide her with a training course that we call Cooking Without Looking. We did not make that name up. So it is copywritten by another individual who wrote the curriculum, but we use it, and we're thankful for that. And what we do is we teach how do you cook a meal without vision. I think it was very empowering for her and helped her in so many ways it's a confidence builder. We also, I want to just mention, if I could, we do have a support group. It's called Adjustment to Blindness Support Group, and we meet monthly. If you want more info on that, please call us to get the specific date. That is open to individuals that have recently got a diagnosis and their spouses. Typically, we don't have children. That's more of an adult.
Yeah.
Children don't generally go to that unless they're, more mature because it's hard and it affects it affects the whole family.
The whole family.
Yeah.
And you can call 817-332-3341 or visit lighthousefw.org. I want to thank my guest, Leslie Ware, the head of Client Services for Lighthouse for the Blind Fort Worth. Also, Lisa Fellers, the head of Development, and Rebecca Smith, who's in charge of External Communications for the agency. Thank you all so much for being on the program today.